no pretty lies. The 5 a.m. low in your eyes says your heart is changing. Now we don't dance like we used to. Silent disco on the floor, baby. Mr. DJ, you get me through. When the beat's gone, you can't save me. Now we don't dance like we used to.
This is Broad Radio. For you, by you. Broad Radio. Here for more.
Good morning and welcome to Broad Radio. I'm Jo Stanley and my co-host today is the gorgeous Angela Pipos. Hi there, Ange.
Morning, Jo.
It's so lovely to see you. And at the very top, I want to give a shout out to the first ever female referee for the Super Bowl, who we saw yesterday strutting her stuff, Sarah Thomas, her name is. She was doing extraordinary work there yesterday.
Awesome. It's hard to be the first woman to do anything, so it comes with a whole lot of hype and often a little bit of criticism.
Yes, well, I did enjoy a lot of the comments on Twitter yesterday in which a lot of people saying, oh, what do we call a female referee? Well, you call her a referee. How about that?
Say it all together now. Referee.
That's what we call her. So congratulations to Sarah Thomas. Today's show is all about trailblazers. We're going to be joined by AFLW player Akec Makur Chuot from the Richmond Footy Club. We're celebrating International Day of Women and Girls in Science with the 2020 winner of the Victoria's Premier's Award for Health and Medical Research, Dr Simone Park, who is doing incredible things around research into new treatments for cancer. And also we're going to be speaking with UK author Emma John about being a woman over 40 who chooses to be single. Another trailblazer, apparently. She joins us from London at about 9:17 this morning. We'll be kicking off in just a second. Broad Radio is proudly supported by Chemist Warehouse. Chemist Warehouse, great savings every day. Oh, and it's so nice to be sharing the show with you on a day where we are really celebrating women who are kind of out there doing things that we haven't seen in previous decades. It's exciting.
And Broad Radio is all about celebrating women, and historically a lot of achievements by women have gone unnoticed. And so we're all about redressing that, fixing it.
Yes. So I need to mention, if you're watching on YouTube Live, welcome. Like and subscribe. If you're watching on Facebook Live, welcome. Give us a like there as well. And here's the thing that we've been doing for the last week, and it's something that I just am very, very proud of for Broad Radio. We started Broad Radio with a foundation charity partner, Women's Housing Limited, and they are an incredible organisation that provide low-cost housing for women who would otherwise be facing homelessness. And so this last week and going into the next week, we're going to be doing this for at least another week. If you subscribe to our email, that's on broadradio.com.au. If you become a new email subscriber, for every new subscriber, we're donating $5. And, we had hoped to, our target was $200. We're on $145. So we want to smash that, really. We've got another week of running this at the least. So why don't you head to broadradio.com.au, chuck us a subscribe there for our email list, and we will donate $5 on your behalf, just the cost of the coffee. A coffee that we would love to. Yeah, I would love to sit down and have a coffee with every woman that I come across in the world. So this is our way of doing that for the women who are at Women's Housing Limited. So, yeah, get along to that. Now, Ange, we are heading into week 3 of the AFLW.
Jo, my favourite subject. I'm glad you've raised this. As you know, I love everything about AFLW. It's a topic very close to my heart. So I'm delighted to welcome our next guest. She has a remarkable story to tell. She was born in South Sudan, and she now wears the number 34 for the Richmond Football Club. And here she is, Akec Makur Chuot. Welcome to you. Welcome to Broad Radio.
Thank you so much for having me, Joe and Ange. It's really appreciated.
It's great to have you on the show. So let's talk about your background. Born in South Sudan, then you spent time at a Kenyan refugee camp, and now you're in Australia. Can you just give us a snapshot of how all that played out for you, and the dreams and aspirations you had along the way?
Yeah, my journey was as I always explain to a lot of people, it was a very it seems like it's been so long, but I've only been alive for 28 years to say the least. But yeah, we started out at I was born in South Sudan, left when I was about 3 months, moved to Kenya, spent 11 years in a Kenyan refugee camp, where we started our visa process to come to Australia, which took about nine years with my family, and then finally we were given the opportunity to come over here. So we landed in Perth, Western Australia, on the 17th of May. I remember it was at night time. This was 2005, and it was just the best feeling ever for my mom, just because she's worked so hard as a single mom to try and get us over here, for better opportunities, and two, for us to get opportunities. And get education as well was a massive one, for my mom. So we moved across, and then yeah, I've been here ever since. When I was a little girl, all I wanted to do was become a sports star. I was very good at soccer at my early age when I started out, when I came here, and I pursued that for many years, and then later left it to go and pursue my footy dreams. So yeah, it's been one wild adventure, but I won't change it for anything.
Akec, I love AFLW because when we watch the women of the AFLW play, it's like we're watching dreams come true every time they run out onto the field. What does footy mean for you?
Footy means a lot. For me, it's a place where I go and belong. Like, my teammates don't see me as, oh, that's Akec from South Sudan. They see me as, this is Akec, our teammate, who has something to bring to our team. And I think that's what I really love. The fans take you like you're their own child. At times they speak to you in a way that you're just like, wow, these people really do care about you, not just because you play footy, but they're there to share in your journey and who you are. So I really love that about footy in general. But for me, AFLW has been, that pillar that's been able to strengthen what we do as role models in the community, to tell young women that they can one day pull on, a Richmond Guernsey, a Collingwood Guernsey, an Adelaide Guernsey, whatever Guernsey it is that they're barracked for growing up, they can now do that. And for me, I grew up in Western Australia, and I grew up with, a massive West Coast fan, and then I was able to pull on an AFL jersey that was Fremantle, and now I get to represent another football club in the Richmond Football Club. So yeah, it's just like, I don't know how big it is right now because I'm living it, but I'm pretty sure once I retire in the future, I'm going to really know the impact that, me being there and along the other women that are representing means to the landscape in today's society, really.
And you were delisted by Fremantle. Did that rock your confidence at all? And how did you find yourself at Richmond?
Yeah, being delisted was kind of more of like a surprise, just because we didn't have a really good season. So I thought, everyone deserves a second opportunity always. But for me, it was like, you know what, you've been through so much adversity your whole life. This is just one obstacle that you can overcome. Like, I was like, I still got 2 hands and 2 legs, and it's just back to the drawing boards, really. It was just that somebody said no, and all I had to do was just turn that no into a yes somewhere else. So I went back, had consultations with my coach and my manager, and yeah, I'm just so blessed that, I grew up in Perth, where I had an amazing woman in Nicole Graves who just took me in from day one and just really supported my journey. So she really influenced that part of my football journey, especially a time where it's really, really tough, where you get delisted and you're like, okay, what's next? So yeah, we went back on the drawing board, had a really good season at Swan District, and then yeah, I got offered an opportunity to come over to Victoria. I had $20 in my account. I bought 3 bags, one-way ticket. I moved here to play at the VFLW. And I was like, you know what, again, you got two hands, you got two legs, you can make it happen. You can get a job, you'll be fine. You came to Australia with nothing. I'm pretty sure going to Melbourne is not the end of the world. So yeah, I moved. It was, at the time I was like, oh, I moved here, and I was like, oh, it's really big. But my mum was very supportive of the move, and then yeah, I played a season at Carlton in the VFLW, and then yeah, I wanted to change again, and I don't know, for some reason the Tigers just spoke to me. In my tribe, we actually call the Quitch people, and Quitch actually translates to tiger in English. So I've been a tiger all my life, and it just happened that I just wanted to go to the yellow and black army because of their song and their team uniform, and then I'm a proper tiger.
Oh, wow. I mean, it is an amazing club with a really proud history. So good choice, I would say, for many reasons, although I am a Collingwood supporter. I love hearing you say that. Somebody said no, but you just had to turn that into a yes somewhere else. What an incredibly inspiring outlook on life, Akec. Is there for you, do you feel the weight of being a role model? Because most definitely you are. And in many years to come, you will realise the impact that you've had on the league and on so many women and boys and girls and everyone watching. Do you feel the weight of being a mentor?
I don't really feel it a lot, just because for me, I didn't have a lot of female role models growing up. I had a few teammates that I really looked up to when I was young. So for me, as an African woman, I see that it's an honor that I get to wear, and I get to represent my community at such a large scale. So for me, I see it more as an honor than as a burden, because when you start seeing it as a burden, then you're not really contributing. But for me, I know that me existing and being an AFLW player, I know I'll contribute massively into changing the narrative that people might have about the South Sudanese and the African community here in Melbourne. So for me, it's a privilege and an honor to be able to do that, and yeah, just wear the colors that I do to represent my family, my community, and everyone that wants to be like us one day. So.
And that's right. Unfortunately, lazy stereotypes about cultures and racism are a part of Australian society. So how important is it to you to play a big role in changing those attitudes that some people might have?
It's really important, because I think sometimes as athletes, people see us that we should just be athletes and just do that. But for me, being an athlete is one thing, but there's so many different elements to who I am. My family is a big pillar to who I am. My family, and then obviously my family goes into my community. So for me, when I look at that, I said, I have to contribute here. I have to be able to, change that narrative, because it's important. Me being silent is not really responding to what needs to be done in our community. I have a responsibility to my community to be able to represent them and be able to speak up when I see something not right. And as you said before, there's a lot of stereotypes. There's racism that I've also dealt with as an athlete, and I can only imagine how bad it must be for everyday community members that have to deal with it. And I know a lot of family members that communicate with me that they too, because I don't catch transport a lot of the time, because you just become a target. You're sitting down next to someone, they will get up on the transport, and stuff like that. Those things really dishearten you as your identity as a human being. So I just avoid transport at all costs. And I know a lot of family members that are in similar boats, that they're just like, they don't feel anywhere that they belong, because they just feel like they've been pushed to the side because of this narrative that people have on African people. So it's an opportunity for people like myself to be able to change that and say, actually, we have such a diverse community who contribute a lot back to the Australian society. We have lawyers, we have doctors, we have healthcare workers, all that stuff. We have so much that we contribute, and we want that represented, and so that people can give us the same respect the way we give them respect. So
that we know that football can be an amazing example of the diversity of our whole society, and that's one of the reasons we love it when it's done really well. And I know that the majority of the people within football and within Australia, you know, we are really supportive and very proud of the diversity of our communities. So I hope that you feel that largely for you, Akec.
Yeah, I do. I do really feel that largely, and obviously there's that. You know, I put the people in three categories. There are the people that are with us on this journey, and then there are the fence sitters, and then there's those people that you just can't change for whatever reasons. Those people that you can't change, we leave them behind, because if you can't get with the program, that's your problem. And then we deal with people that are with us on the journey, and for me that's always been my outlook on life. Not everyone's going to agree with everything that you do as a human being. I had some people that were like supportive of my haircut. They were like, oh, amazing. And then I had the people that were like, we don't like it. And I'm like, you don't pay my bills. So
I love it. That's so great. So we're going into the third round of AFLW, and Richmond's had a bit of a rough start. How does that feel for you guys as a team? Does it galvanise you?
I think for us, we are very clear on what we are doing as a club. We have a process in place. You know, we got an amazing new coach and a whole different coaching panel from last year. So for us, and we went to the draft and drafted really well, and then also picked up some players during the trade as well. So those people have been able to come and really make an important impact into our club right now and where we're heading. So for us, it's not about winning a premiership this year, but it's about the process of, you know, where we get to as a women's program at the Richmond Football Club. So I think that's what's really exciting. And I think for a lot of people, it's, oh, Richmond hasn't won a game, it's the end of the world. But for me as a player, during my second year at the club, I can really see where we're heading as a group, and I've completely bought into what the coaching staff are doing. So I think everyone just bear with us. Just like any good thing, it doesn't just happen overnight. So I'm just get excited for what's to come for the Richmond Football Club. So yeah.
Oh yeah, there's a lot to be excited.
Absolutely. You've got a great perspective on everything. I'm really enjoying chatting to you. Just finally from me, you're blessed with height and athleticism. You can play in defence. You can play further up the ground. Where do you like to play on the footy field? If I'm the coach, tell me where you want to play.
If I'm the coach, I'm just a natural born. I love being on the wing. That's where I started my footy journey, and then I went to the rock, and then I made my way back as a defender. So right now, being a defender is what the team needs from me. So I just got to trust that process. But my position that I really love is on the wing, just running up and down, you know, helping the forward line, but also helping the defense as well. So hopefully one day. Back on the wing.
You are absolutely glorious to watch running up and down the field, I must say, Akec. So all the best. It is an exciting time for the Richmond Footy Club as you build. This weekend you are playing West Coast on Sunday, as it's presented by the Midsummer Festival, which is Victoria's premier LGBTQI arts and cultural festival. So once again, amazing diversity being celebrated amongst our footy culture, which one of the things we love about footy, wouldn't you say, Ange? All the best with your season. Akec, thanks so much for joining us.
And thank you so much for having me. It's been really awesome chatting to you both.
Lovely to chat to you as well, Akec. In just a moment, we're going to be crossing live to London. And I am a lover of language, and I've come across a new term coined by UK author Emma John. She's used the term never married, used in place of that very nasty word spinster. I love this.
It's a great idea, but in her column, she talks about the evolution of the word spinster, and it hasn't always had negative connotations. So it's really interesting to hear how we've interpreted that word over different periods of time. So I can't wait to find out more about it.
Well, in fact, she joins us now live from London. Good morning, Emma John. Hello.
Hi, hello.
Now, you've used this term never married to refer to this every increasing number of women, particularly, who are finding themselves single and choosing, in fact, the single life. Is it true that there's many, many more people making that choice these days?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely many more people who are never married. That is like it's mostly to do with the bigger societal changes that have been happening. It's not necessarily just to do with choosing to be single for your whole life. It's more people, economically, women don't need to marry in the same way that they still did only 100 years ago, less than 100 years ago, So the freedoms that women have meant that the marriage age has got later and later and later. So unmarried women, make up a larger proportion of the demography in many countries, not just the UK, but also the United States, China, Japan, Australia. It's different. I feel a bit naughty saying never married, because obviously lots of people don't want to get married. But they are in long-term partnerships that are, for them, the same level of commitment as marriage. And so the reason I've said never married is because that simply applies to me. But I'm also, never in a long-term partnership, never settled down, I suppose, is another way of thinking about it. I'm basically trying to describe the many women now who have grown up with the romantic storyline and the social conditioning that we all grow up with, that getting married or finding a partner is something that happens to us all. That is what we are told since we start reading fairy tales, or since our parents start reading fairy tales to us before we can even read. The idea that it's the marker of adulthood, essentially. It's something that we all want. It's something we all, our lives are supposed to be sort of heading towards, as some sort of fulfillment of adulthood. And then families go with that. The idea that you then become a mother, and motherhood is, a big part of the female experience, and not having it is somehow meaning that you haven't quite lived the entire female life. You haven't quite lived the fulfilled ideal of being a woman. And in my case, and I think in lots of cases, it's not a choice in the sense of I haven't at some stage in my life said, do you know what, I don't like the idea of having a partner. Oh my goodness, I love the idea of having a partner. I actually love the idea of getting married. I'd love to get married one day. But for me and for many of my friends, it hasn't happened. And there just has to come a point. And for me, it was really turning 40. There comes a point I think in all of our lives, where we then have to kind of grapple with the idea, well, what is my identity? Who am I? Because the only word that was left over for me, was spinster or old maid. And I don't want to be either of those things.
No.
But from reading your piece, I did discover that the word spinster was almost celebrated at one time. It meant a woman with a rebellious spirit. Do you think we could reach a point where women can reclaim that word?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, lots of women obviously, just say, well, we shouldn't ever use that word again. And certainly in the UK, it went out of official use in 2005, because up until then, it was the official term for a woman who had never been married before.
Really?
So that was what you put on your marriage license.
No way.
So it said spinster of this parish, then you write your name, and then the man was the bachelor of this parish.
Wow.
And it's a legal term. It was basically that it started out as a trade term. It started out having nothing to do with unmarried unmarried women. It began, it was simply a word to describe people who earned their living spinning wool. And this was something that, you know, people did for hundreds and hundreds of years, millennia almost. It was basically the only way you got wool into a state in order to be able to make clothes of it before the Industrial Revolution. So there were lots of men and women whose jobs would have been called spinster. What happened was, you know, by the kind of Middle Ages, and certainly by the kind of by the sort of 1500s, 1600s, it had become a trade that was particularly common among unmarried women because it was laborious, it was low paid, and so it was something that they were given to do. And the married women either tended to be tending home or they were getting actually slightly better jobs as a result of their connections through their husbands. So spinster, it was more and more becoming when women, you know, were writing down their names on legal documents, they were saying they were spinsters, and the two things became conflated because so many unmarried women were spinsters that it became the legal term for unmarried women.
Wow. But bringing it forward now into what is the 21st century, and it seems, as we said, it's increasing numbers of people are single much longer and choosing to be so for, you know, for the rest of their lives perhaps. We saw with lockdown last year, particularly in Melbourne, but, you know, around the world, that people who were on their own were considerably more disadvantaged when we were in lockdown because they didn't have families and we weren't allowing visitors. It really kind of struck us at that time how being on your own is a very much harder at times way of living because the world is still made up for couples, isn't it? It's all set up for couples and families.
It is set up for couples and families. And the thing that I always come back to, and all my single girlfriends come back to, is the sort of strange unspoken hierarchy. If you go on holiday with a group of your friends and you are the single woman, or even if there are two of you single women, you will be the ones who end up like having to share a room, even if you don't know the person. You'll end up being expected to share a room with somebody because, you know, the couples get all the nice double rooms with the en-suites, and it's like, there's one with twin beds in there, or, you know, or we need to squeeze them in. So there are all these myriad ways in which you just are aware, you know, single women are aware that in some unspoken social way, and it's not because their friends don't love them, but it's just because of the way that society is set up, that we are considered lower down the food chain, and things are harder. And that is actually, you know, Angie mentioned that about the sort of rebellious spirit. So that sort of came around particularly in the Victorian era, when it was like a really, really tough time to be a single woman economically. That was like, it was a really hard time because if you were of a certain class, you weren't expected to work. You weren't, you know, it wasn't done to kind of earn your own living, but also there was nothing that you were considered, qualified for. And so you had no economic advantage. You had a huge economic disadvantage, but at the same time, you were kind of, you know, societally sort of stopped from earning your living, which is why there's so many 19th century novels about governesses like Jane Eyre, because that was the one thing that they could do, and it was and you earned a pittance, and it was awful, and that is why you get this wonderful sort of solidarity of spinsters in the Victorian era who come together and do extraordinary things in terms of, you know, making the country a better place, social reform, prison reform. That a lot of them become the first pioneers of women in all sorts of trades, from journalism to law to medicine to nursing. You know, these are women who sort of go out and just literally change the world. They changed you know, our entire human civilization. And they did it because they weren't married, and partly they were impelled because they had to earn some money, but partly also they just didn't have the expectations on them. They didn't have the claims on their time of having to be a wife and having to be a mother, and so they've done amazing things. And I just think that is happening again, and it just needs to be recognised and celebrated.
And life can be challenging enough without having to be judged for your relationship status. And another part of this is the cultural stuff. I grew up in a fairly traditional Greek Australian house. My mum and dad were married at 21. My brother was married at 21, and my sister was married at 21. I was expected to follow that path. I never married, and I'm 51. But I don't look it, do I, Jo?
No, you look amazing.
Thank you. But, you know, I was feeling the family pressure. Did you get any of that, or is it just more sort of societal and social conditioning?
Oh, no, definitely. Family, it's interesting. Pressure sounds so negative, and certainly, you know, you do experience it negatively. But the most frustrating thing is with it's less pressure than hope. It's like, it's so, you know, your family are so hopeful for you, and they're so worried that it won't be enough if you don't find the partner of your dreams, that it's the concern and anxiety for you if you don't have that person. And my mum used to say, you know, I think it was a completely fair point, you know, life is just easier. Like, if you have someone to share the burden with, it is easier. Now, that might well be true, but I can't make my life, and you know, unless I'm really prepared to just be like, okay, I'll marry anybody, you know, don't worry about whether we're compatible, or, you know, whether we've got anything in common. I'll just marry somebody just to try and make my life easier. We know that wouldn't be true, because we know that would result in a terrible marriage, and it would be really depressing. But I think that, yeah, that family kind of, to know that, to have parents who, you know, it's coming from a place of massive love and concern, and maybe concern for, like, what will your life be like when they're gone? You know, that's how much they love you. They're thinking, who's going to look after you when I'm gone? And that is something that you sort of, you all these things you internalize, and you don't even realize you've internalized them, basically, until you sit down and start thinking about it and maybe write a book about it.
Yeah, well, and you have written a book about it, and I know there's a massive audience for your book, because there are so many people in the same boat. The thing of it is, though, that concern and that hope and all of society wanting you to be coupled comes from an understanding that you're somehow less than, and you're then having to turn around and find ways to really celebrate who you are and celebrate the choices you've made. Like, I really think it's a wonderful thing when someone chooses not to partner with someone, because a lot of us have made, not me, I'm very happy in my marriage, but many people have made choices because they felt pressured. So I guess, you know, my question is, how do you go about really embracing your life with all of this around you, and just saying, no, actually, these are the things I love about the way I'm living, and I'm not less than?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that is work you have to kind of do inside your own head. You know, you have to recognize that these are things that you know, maybe I always said that I used to think of myself as pre-married, because I just assumed it would happen to me, because, you know, I already thought I was great. I had no problem with self-esteem. Right. So I was never a kind of like worried, lonely single. All through my 20s and my 30s, I was like, I'm great. You know, it'll happen when it happens. You know, I've got loving family who tell me I'm great all the time. But what I didn't realize was that, yeah, kind of at a deeper level, I had never really embraced the fact that it might never happen. And that was the point at which I had to really think about it and be like, well, I have to think about the future. I actually have to. You don't really kind of honestly sit down and prepare for a future where you're on your own, because you always think, oh, it probably won't happen like that. And actually, sitting down and thinking and looking at role models. I've got friends, you know, I've got a very dear friend who is in her 80s, and I've got other friends who are in their 60s and 50s who have never married and who have never had a serious long-term relationship, just like me. And so I have to look at them and look at their lives and be like, well, they're absolutely rocking it, you know, and I know that there is a life for me, you know, that doesn't involve having a partner. And I have to say, you sort of mentioned lockdown, and things being harder for single people in lockdown. And I think that is true in very sort of many sort of day-to-day ways. And, you know, I know me and a lot of my girlfriends, you know, we have, unlike people who are in families and couples, we have literally gone days or weeks, you know, or sometimes longer, without seeing somebody face to face, without having a conversation face to face, without touching somebody, you know, which is, I think, a big thing, like just like having human touch, human contact, because you're not even allowed to do that with this crazy virus. But the thing that has really come home to me through lockdown is the extraordinary resilience of my single friends. And I actually think my single girlfriends have handled lockdown better than anyone else I know. And the only thing I can think about it is, well, we've been training for this all our lives. Mm-hmm. You know? Yes. We have been building up the resourcefulness and resilience. And it's only something like this that has shown us just how amazing we are at living our lives and being self-reliant.
Yes, it's true. And you've pointed out to us that we're very indebted to the single woman, not just from those Victorian times, but now, of course, we have many career women who are doing extraordinary things, who have not found themselves partnered, who are changing the world. And so we are very much indebted. And I have read that actually single women without children are often much happier than married women with children. And there are days that I would concur with that. I don't know about you, Ange.
I have a sick child at home from school today.
Right. So that's it. But I want to acknowledge that it's not always easy, and it's not always necessarily someone's choice as well. And I would recommend another book that I came across by an Australian woman. It's called The Art of Living Alone and Loving It, because I'm guessing that there is a lot that you have to learn to do, and there's a skill to actually living alone and loving it there, Emma.
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, there are so many little things, aren't there, that just, you know, if you don't have a partner to turn around and go, will you just help me carry this step ladder through to the next room, or whatever it is, heavy objects. I mean, they are like, I just feel like they come up so much in my single life, because you just can't. There are certain things you cannot move with just one person.
Of course. What about doing up a zipper?
Like redecorating a disaster.
Oh, sure.
I mean, you know, that is my friend Alex. That is her bête noire. That's her thing. And she's just like, I would just like once in my life to not have to, like, you know, struggle with my zipper before I go out.
I just need someone to do up the zipper.
We shouldn't have to put the bins out.
No. Well, I don't mind putting the bins out, actually. I find it very cathartic, taking it out once a week, going, be gone. Evidence of the spoils of my life. I like that it's gone.
I mean, the good thing is you don't sort of end up feeling resentful that somebody else isn't doing the chores. I think that is a big truth to being single, because I feel if you live with somebody, you spend a lot of time resenting the fact they haven't done this or that, and you have to do it all. Well, if you're single, you have to do it all anyway.
Yes.
You can't resent yourself, so you just get on with it.
That is a most positive thing. Well, your book is out in May, I understand. It's called Self-Contained, Scenes from a Single Life. Emma John, thank you so much for joining us all the way from London. It's great to have you on Broad Radio.
Thanks.
With my respiratory issues, I know I have to quit smoking. And quitting before I'm 40 means I'll live up to 9 years longer. What will your future hold when you quit? Make your next quit attempt at Chemist Warehouse.
Broad Radio. Talking inspo we love, info we need, and sharing more of us. Watch and listen live every Tuesday 9 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time at broadradio.com.au Or find us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube and LinkedIn at Broad Radio Oz. Talk to us live. Call on 1300 8 Broad. Catch up on demand anytime, anywhere, every time, everywhere. On the train, we'll be here. 2 a.m. existential crisis? We've got you covered. Broad Radio. Here for more.
Well, it's so exciting to welcome one of my favourite funny ladies, Kirsty Webeck. She's there on the screen. Hi, Kirsty.
Hello, how you going?
Yeah, really well. Before we get to a very important question that I have for you, I do need to mention 1300 8 Broad is our phone number and you can call us. We would love to hear from you, and we chuck you on the lines and we'll have a chat with you live. Full transparency, we haven't had that working yet. So if you want to be a guinea pig and call us now, we'd love to hear from you. But you can always comment on Facebook and YouTube as well if you're watching live. And we welcome, thank you so much, to Savannah Blaze, who commented on Facebook with regard to that chat that we just had with Emma John, author of that amazing book about single life. She says, I agree, we are all very self-reliant as a single woman. I agree. We are happier as we don't have to look after someone else. Thanks so much, Savannah, and I'm glad that you're happy. That's really important. So, yeah, by all means, give us a comment anytime. We'd love to hear from you, Facebook, YouTube, and call 1300 8 Broad. And you may have something to say about what Kirsty is about to share with us. Because, so Kirsty, I have wanted to ask you about this for some time. I've followed you on Twitter. We've been Twitter friends before we actually spoke in person, which is very modern day of us. And so I'm aware that you are someone who claims you have seen a panther in the wild in Australia.
Yeah, I don't claim it. I know it to be fact. Just to make it very clear, Joe. It's true. I maintain to this day, and it's the most ridiculous thing, and I can barely tell the story with a straight face because I know it's ridiculous. But I went on a camping trip down near Lorne, and I will swear on everything I own that's not very much that I saw the Otway panther on that camping trip. The thing that makes the story... Sorry, go on.
Oh, I just wanted to really explain, if you're not from Victoria, okay, so this is like an ongoing urban myth that I've heard many times, that in the Otways, which is a beautiful sort of, rainforest area down outside of Melbourne, that there's big black cats that live there. This is like have you heard this, Ange?
Well, yes, I have, but I grew up in South Australia and I grew up hearing the same kind of stories over there around the Coonawarra, sort of Mount Gambier area. But the panthers there, they rounded their vowels and they said Lego, not Lego. But they were a different breed. I grew up with the same stories.
Not dance.
Exactly.
So, okay, you were camping and what happened, Kirsty?
Yeah, firstly, I just want to quickly say I'm glad that you acknowledged and called them panthers, Ange, unlike Joe, who's committing to calling them large black cats.
Oh, okay. Sure.
There's a distinction, okay?
Okay, sure.
So I was camping and we heard a little bit of a commotion off in the bushes. I was with a bunch of mates and two of us went off into the bushes to see what the commotion was. And this is the worst part of the story.
Right.
There were two massive kangaroos, and so we're like, fair enough, that's what it was, massive kangaroos. But then in between the two massive kangaroos was a big black cat, which was definitely a panther. And it's the worst bit because the way I tell it is that the Otway panther was hanging out with its kangaroo mates.
That's the natural habitat and the natural crew that panthers hang out with.
Well, I wish it hadn't been with the kangaroos. Like, I hate that bit of the story so much. But I've got to tell it because I'm an honest person. But I'm like, why couldn't it have been by itself?
Yeah, like, mysteriously kind of living its life just as a lone panther somewhere in the Otways, but in fact it's just like sort of absorbed into the flora and fauna of the Australian bush.
Had you been sitting around the campfire? Had you been sitting around a campfire, maybe having 1 or 2 glasses of red before this sighting?
You are not the first person to have asked that, Ange.
I'm sure.
But it was dusk. It was a little bit beyond dusk. So it was early in the day, so we weren't too deep into the reveling yet. And I know what it sounds like. That's why I hate the story so much.
So how do you know it wasn't just a giant, feral cat? Because this is the alternative story I've heard, that it's not actually a panther, that it's just, feral cats can get pretty big.
Okay, well, firstly, because as you well know, I own a very large feral cat. So I've got her as a comparison.
Okay.
That is a fact. But this thing was huge. Like it would have been like a 40-kilogram animal. Like it was bigger than a Labrador. And I don't know if feral cats get that big. Do they?
I'm not an expert on feral cats, but how did it get there? How does a panther get into the Otways?
Well, funny you should mention that, because I have joined a Facebook group of big cat sightings, which is the worst thing I've ever done in my life.
Of course you have.
And it's consuming all my time. I've had to give up stand-up. But apparently there's two schools of thought, and one is that they were used as military mascots by the US military, people seem to think, like way back in the day when they came over. And the other school of thought is that they've come from circuses and other kinds of travelling shows that were fairly unregulated. And like a couple of them got out into the wild and then, found each other and rekindled their love affairs and carried on breeding.
I like the circus story.
Yeah, I like that too. Was it wearing a little glittery jacket, or was it able to juggle?
No, that's ridiculous. But it was breathing fire.
So you saw the panther with its mates, the kangaroos, and then what happened? Is that it? Was that the story?
And then, yeah, my mates and I, we retreated, right? And they're bigger skeptics about anything than I am. But we retreated and we didn't say anything for several more hours. And then after a bit, we were like, did you see anything weird with the kangaroos? Like, did they have a strange friend, for example? And then we were like, there was a big black cat, wasn't there? And we were like, yeah, there was definitely a big black cat. And then I think they just laid it to rest, but I can't. So I publicly have started talking about it, knowing full well that everyone thinks I'm a little bit off. But I'm a comedian. I can't keep it to myself.
No, you're a comedian, so you can share this far and wide, and people just go, oh, she's a comic, doesn't even matter. But
exactly.
Are you now
until I take all of you on the Broad Radio camping trip and introduce you to the Otway panther, and you can see it for yourself.
I only do glamping.
Fair
Deal.
enough.
We'll sort it out, Ange.
Yeah, we're all sitting there in our dodgy swags, whilst Ange has got like an out of Africa kind of 4-poster sort of arrangement with someone washing her hair
with aircon.
I've never tried glamping. It appeals to me. I mean, I'd like to have a proper bed in the tent.
Yeah, wouldn't we all?
That's nice. Yeah, we'll pop in and find Ange having high tea with the Otway panther.
I love it. Oh, Kirsty, I just love that story so much. Thank you so much for sharing. It's given me a great laugh, and I hope it's true. I really do hope it's true. Wouldn't that be an amazing thing if there's a whole species of Australian panthers hanging out in our bush? Wouldn't that be great?
with kangaroos.
With kangaroos. Oh, thanks, Kirsty. We're going to speak.
Thanks, legends.
We'll speak to you again soon.
Bye.
We've got more Broad Radio after
See you,
this.
mate.
I'm in a new stratosphere.
Well, Thursday is International Day of Women and Girls in Science, and here's some startling statistics. And women make up only around 16% of Australians working in STEM in Australia: science, technology, engineering and maths. And globally, female students enrolment is particularly low. In IT, 3%, natural science, mathematics and statistics, it's 5%, and in engineering, manufacturing and construction, it's 8%. So, of course, it's a really important day to celebrate women and girls in science, and I think to celebrate some trailblazers right here in Australia. So I'm very excited to welcome the winner of Victoria's Premier's Award for Health and Medical Research in 2020. She's a research fellow at the Doherty Institute, which, of course, was really at the forefront of COVID research in Australia over the last 12 months. And she is a superstar to us. Welcome, Dr Simone Park.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Simone, this time last year I had never said the word immunology, I don't think, in my life. And in the last 12 months, immunology really has come to the forefront. And you are working at the Doherty Institute, but your research is not into COVID. Your research is into a new treatment for cancer. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I work on a particular type of immune cell, and this immune cell is special because it lives in our tissues. So organs like the skin and the lung and the gut, it's not like the typical immune cells that are constantly migrating through the blood. And so what we found in our team over the past few years is that these cells are really important to protect against cancers and also to protect against infections that occur at these sorts of surfaces of the body where you're getting exposed to pathogens or microbes all the time. And so we've basically been able to show that these cells can enhance protection against a variety of different infections and cancers. And so what we're looking at now is how these cells develop and how they can be targeted or improved in order to potentially boost responses against both infections and cancers, and then therefore potentially find new vaccines or treatments for different kinds of diseases.
Simone, is there a particular cancer that these cells are good at combating?
They're actually implicated in combating a wide variety of cancers. So definitely as a subset, solid cancers, they're very good at combating. Because they are found in the tissues where those sorts of cancers develop. So things like skin cancer, breast cancer, lung cancer, these cells have been implicated in protecting against all of these different types of cancers. In the work that we've done at the Doherty Institute, we've mostly looked at their role in melanoma, which is a type of skin cancer, and showing that these cells are really important to prevent the spread and development of cancer, as well as potentially the metastasis through the body after they develop in the skin.
Simone, it really strikes me that the language that rolls off your tongue around protection against skin cancer and finding new treatments around all different kinds of cancer, like it's so casual to you, but to us, we're hearing extraordinary research that can save lives. Does it feel real to you that you're working on something that actually can keep someone's loved one with them for longer?
I mean, it's definitely a benefit of going to work every day, knowing that what you are doing might actually end up being able to help people down the line. For me, my work mostly focuses on really fundamental mechanics of how the immune system is actually recognizing these sorts of foreign things that it doesn't want to have around and how it's fighting them off. And so for me, I'm more interested in like the very initial process of how the immune system is capable of doing that. So oftentimes I don't really get to like think about the potential implications of what that might translate into in the future. So at a day-to-day level, I'm usually just thinking about exactly how things are working on sort of a minute scale. But yeah, it is definitely a great bonus to sort of think about the big picture and how that might be able to influence treatments down the line. And I hope that some of the work that we've done and the work that I continue to do might be able to do that in the future.
It's just so important. So what is the next step in this research? What happens next for you?
So for our line of research, what we've been able to show so far is that cell type that I work on, so they're called tissue resident memory T cells, which is like a very jargony word. So basically just cells that live in tissues, that these cells are important to protect against cancer. But now we want to know how they're exactly doing that. And importantly, we want to know how we can make more of these cells in people that might not have many of them, because that's potentially a reason that they might not respond well to treatments that we already have for cancer. Or if we could find out ways to make more of them, we might be able to think of entirely new lines of treatment for cancer. So I guess that understanding how those cells are developing during an immune response against cancer or during an immune response to an infection could help us to sort of, it could be the key, I suppose, that we need to understand what is the next best treatment for these kinds of diseases.
Simone, Thursday is International Day of Women and Girls in Science. And I read that to get more girls involved in STEM, we need to see role models. It really is important for girls to know other people, often in their families, that are involved in the science, engineering, technology. Was there a role model for you that sort of led you into this career?
So for me, I kind of got interested in science when I was in high school. So I think that initially sort of like sparked my passion for thinking about biology, especially. I really loved learning from my teachers at high school. I think that it was important that they sort of inspired me to be really interested in that field and I guess sort of realize just how interesting that it is. And then as I've sort of progressed through my tertiary education, there have been a lot more sort of apparent role models, I suppose, that are actually working in the field. So I'm lucky enough to have a mentor and a boss that's a female scientist, and she's a really amazing scientist. She's done a lot of incredible work, and she is definitely a role model for me and very supportive. So I think that you do kind of collect more role models in science sort of later on. I don't think that early on there are as many that are accessible, but I think that there's a lot of programs now that are trying to expose more girls in high school or in their sort of younger years to what a career in science might look like and make that more approachable. Because a lot of people, I think, when they are in high school, don't really know what sorts of careers are available. So I think this is something that's really important to sort of showcase the kinds of careers that you can do. It's not only, doctors or nurses that are working in this sort of healthcare field, but also people that I suppose are somewhat more behind the scenes in a sense that are doing work in a lab on the bench, or even people working in industry or science, public relations, science communication. There's a lot of different careers in science. There's not just one kind of career that might look like. So I think that it's important to continue sort of showing young women and everyone really when they're in high school what kinds of careers that might be available for them in science that they might not immediately think of when they think about a scientist.
And Simone, I know you don't go into medical research for public recognition, but when you won the award, was there a bit of a woohoo, I've done it?
Yeah, I mean, I was very surprised. So it was a lovely surprise, but it wasn't something that I was expecting. So I suppose my initial reaction was just shock. But yeah, it is really nice to have your work recognized. Doing a PhD is not an easy time of one's life, and the award basically recognizes the work that people have done during their PhD. So there were, I think, 5 other category winners as well in this particular set of awards that have also done amazing work during their PhD. So it was great to win, but also just I think it's a great thing that we can celebrate the work that young researchers are doing in Victoria and in Australia, because it's important to support our sort of next generation of scientists moving forward and like give them the kind of push to remain working in the industry, even though it can be a bit tough at times.
And finally, because we are celebrating women and girls in science, how do we get girls into science and how do we keep them there? Because I think retention of women and getting them into senior roles is equally a problem.
Yeah, that's really true. So I think getting women into science really just starts with that sort of exposure to different kinds of careers and making them feel passionate about science. So I think it does start a lot in school. but also hopefully now with the rise of things like, Netflix, and with more sort of exposure to the internet on a day-to-day basis, it is somewhat easier to showcase these different kinds of jobs in science and showcase how cool science actually is. Because if you don't learn about these things, you might not realize that you're interested in them. So I think that it's really important to give people these sorts of opportunities to see these careers. And then moving forward in the workplace, there's definitely sort of, I suppose, a plateau in a lot of women's career progression in science, where you get to a certain point, which is kind of the point that I am at the moment, where I'm an early career researcher, and it becomes a lot harder for you to start moving up into positions of power, I suppose, like into positions of leadership. So I think that the way to sort of deal with that is just to make that sort of more of a known issue in the community. First off, I don't know how well known it is that we have many, many more male PIs, so principal investigators that are in charge of their own research programs and that are receiving lots of funding by comparison with women. So I think that it's important to put the sort of structural supports in place that allow women to advance in this career. Obviously, one hurdle is wanting to potentially have a family, raise children. These things can sort of make it difficult for people to be achieving as many publication milestones and things like that are important in order to progress in science. And I think that maybe, having these institutional sort of structures put in place that really support women through that. But also I think that it can't just come from women to women. Like, women need to support other women, of course, and that's something that is definitely happening in the scientific community, but it really needs to be a motivation for everybody working in the field to sort of see people, or sort of push women up in the ranks and really support them to be able to move forward with their research and their research programs into positions of leadership.
Yeah, well, we absolutely support that conversation, and we want to keep that conversation going, because without the words of, just encouragement, but also really pushing for, as you say, that kind of structural change, and even the funding, like just being aware that it probably, I'm guessing, similarly to entrepreneurs and female founders, get about 3% of venture capital. I'm assuming perhaps that women who are applying for research grants perhaps get less than men investing in their projects. That's a guess, actually. I'm going to say, Simone.
Yeah, no, that is true.
Is it true?
It's so I guess the success rate for women at sort of like women are met at a similar level in terms of their academic level, or in terms of their sort of professional achievements. Men do have a much higher success rate in securing their own grants as the sort of leader of that grant. So that's definitely a chronic problem that we're still trying to work on in the scientific community. But yeah, hopefully moving forward, we'll start to, continue to see more women that are achieving great things, because there are a lot of amazing women doing really great science in Australia and around the world. So
yeah, and you are one of them. Thank you so much, Dr. Simone Park. You have inspired me greatly, and all the best with your research.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me on the show. It's been great.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you so much. In just a moment, Ange, you're going to share with us the trailer for your amazing documentary about International Women's Day cricket last year. That's in just a second. I want to say, actually, Ange, before we get to your trailer, that someone has just commented on our socials. How is Dr. Simone Park so young, and she's done so much, and she's so wise? What a broad. She is a broad, an amazing broad.
Great interview. Yeah. Isn't it interesting today, though, that with that interview, and also with our author, Emma, beforehand, social conditioning has a lot to answer for. Creating the society where it's just a bit harder for girls and women. I mean, the key to science is to ignite the spark at a young age. So it's really important that it's at primary school level that we encourage girls to go for it.
I didn't even think of science at school. It didn't even occur to me that I might have been quite good at it. Wouldn't even know.
Well, yes, and I could have been playing on the wing for the Adelaide Crows. I didn't have that opportunity when we were talking about that before.
Yeah.
The wing is where I see myself running freely.
Oh, I see it too, Ange. I see it in my dreams, you running freely with your ponytail streaming behind you. I would love to see that. Ange, it is an exciting week for you because your documentary about the Women's T20 World Cup final on International Women's Day last year has finally had its wings.
I'm so excited. We can release the film to the world, and it will premiere on Amazon Prime this Friday. And my co-producer, director Nicole Minchin, and I just could not be any more excited about letting it fly into the world. And I believe we have the trailer.
Yes, we have the trailer. Yeah, here it is.
The biggest crowd we've played in front of is 5,000, and they're telling us they want to fill the MCG in a World Cup final.
How are you possibly going to do that?
Well, we're thinking big, aren't we?
Welcome to the 2020 Women's T20 World Cup.
We as a group have done great things for cricket, sport and women around the world.
Australia are always the team that people want to beat.
We're going to win this whole World Cup.
If we can beat Australia, we can beat any team.
Australia in deep, deep trouble.
I thought, you just lost the World Cup.
Gosh, are we putting too much pressure on all these players?
We weren't invincible.
That doesn't look good.
We said we weren't under any more pressure than normal. Though I don't think there's been any extra pressure on us at all. We blatantly lied.
This is why we all love sport. It's unscripted, the theatre.
We want to be remembered as a team that is the greatest team ever. But I think more than that, we want to be remembered as a team that play with character and fight and spirit.
Sunday the 8th of March will be remembered as the day that sport opened its doors.
We were definitely playing for more than just us.
I looked at Moons, I smiled, and we glove punched, and I said, this is our time.
That moment was so powerful.
You'll never see better than that. It doesn't matter, male or female.
Oh, Ange just gave me chills. That crowd. Just seeing that crowd. It's massive.
Huge. All good sporting documentaries need drama, and that tournament delivered. I could not have scripted it better. I mean, I'm sort of getting a bit teary myself. It's been a project for 18 months. You know, I've been sort of talking to you about it. It's had its challenges. Making a film is hard. Making a film in lockdown, even harder. But we got there. We made it, and now everyone gets a chance to view it. I should say that it will be on free-to-air television as well, and I'll have more to say about that over the next week or so. I can't announce it just yet. But this Friday, Amazon Prime, 2-part series. You might need some tissues.
Just amazing, Ange, and congratulations on the achievement, because I know my husband's
Jo.
a filmmaker. Like, putting together any kind of film documentary is a massive achievement. So congratulations, and I'm really excited to watch this story come to life. We blatantly lied. What a great quote. We just lied.
They just had to do that because they were under so much pressure, but they couldn't say it. But everyone knew that they needed to get through to the final for there to be any hope of us breaking this record. So they carried the weight of that. It's a good story.
It's an amazing story. We can't wait to watch it this Friday night. Congratulations, Ange. I'm
Thanks,
really
Jo.
excited. we were late. So we've got to wrap this up. It's been an amazing show. Just a couple of things. Don't forget, we are continuing our commitment to donate $5 for every new email subscriber that we get. Head to broadradio.com.au. We really want to smash our target and raise lots and lots of money for Women's Housing Limited, which is for women who would otherwise be facing homelessness. So get along and do that. You can like and subscribe us on YouTube, like us on Broad Radio, Facebook as well. That's at Broad Radio Oz. And we will see you all next week. Thanks so much, Ange.
Bye.